The file begins. January 2026. A California judge, it seemed, carved a new curse into stone. The lawsuit from former assistant Ashley Walters rose from the ashes of oblivion. Not by chance. A new legal norm, Assembly, Bill 250. A 2-year window. A chance like a knife in the back. For those who believed time healed wounds, or at least expired them. This was not merely a legal procedure. It was a sentence to a new round of public inquisition. Simultaneously, from the digital tomb of the Epstein archives, like a phantom from a forgotten grave, his name surfaced. Not as an accused, but as part of an anonymous tip, a shadow cast upon an already scarred reputation. While one court seemed to close the doors on the past, another archive flung them open with renewed force. The air around him thickened once more. It smelled not of fresh printer's ink, but of the musty dust of old sins. The audit of the soul was restarted, without right of appeal. 5 years of sobriety. A personal triumph that dissolved into the acrid smoke of fresh accusations. What taste does such a victory hold when the world around crumbles? Bitter, perhaps even poisonous. The curse of the past, it seemed, clung to him like road grime to a luxury car. Every movement, every sound of his voice was now sifted through the sieve of collective pause memory. The public, eternally hungry for blood, received its sustenance once more. A cancelled concert in the UK. The outrage of a Mexican governor. The wreckage of an empire only just beginning to rebuild, crumbled anew. This was not a collapse. This was a slow, agonizing process of pause exile. A mutilated destiny. A financial verdict not delivered by a court, but already signed by the mob. He stood in his own path, surrounded by a silence louder than any scream. A silence portending imminent pause emptiness. Brian Hugh Warner. An ordinary name, born into a landscape of quiet American fear. Ohio, the Bible Belt's northern frontier, provided the initial concrete. Religious schools. A rigid framework designed to contain, not to inspire. Yet, within this controlled environment, a different kind of architect was at work. He consumed horror films, glam rock's decadent glitter, punk's raw scream. These were not mere influences. They were the raw materials for a self-made god or a demon. The relocation to Florida, a swampy crucible, allowed the final alchemy. Pause Marilyn Monroe. Pause Charles Manson. Two icons, one of manufactured allure, the other of chaotic destruction. Their names, surgically conjoined, became a manifesto, a deliberate statement. This was not an accidental metamorphosis, but a calculated act of self-creation, an inventory of future sins meticulously plotted. The spooky kids, his first acolytes, bore witness to the genesis. The early performances, crude and confrontational, were rehearsals for a grander tragedy. The shock was not merely for shock's sake. It was a weapon, a tool to dismantle the very fear he was raised within. He built a persona, brick by provocative brick, never anticipating the weight of the edifice it would become. This was the pause legacy. The first nail, hammered with precision into a coffin he was yet to inhabit. The blueprint was laid. The entity was ready to consume. Trent Reznor, seeing a kindred spirit in the nascent chaos, offered a platform. Nothing records. The machine began to hum. Portrait of an American Family was merely an introduction, a taste of the impending storm. Then came Antichrist Superstar. Not just an album, but a declaration of war. The nation, largely unprepared, reacted with the predictable fury of the righteous. Churches burned his records. Politicians decried his influence. Parental groups mobilized, their fear a palpable, marketable commodity. This was the pause meat grinder of fame. Every controversy, every canceled show, every moral panic only amplified his signal. The media, hungry for outrage, fed the beast. He became the lightning rod for society's anxieties, the convenient scapegoat for every ill. The glitter of success, the gold records, the sold-out arenas. They were real, but beneath that sheen lay the profound misery of constant siege, the isolation of being the perpetually misunderstood villain. His performances, a meticulously crafted theater of the grotesque, were dissected, distorted, and used as evidence in a trial without jury. The brilliance of his provocation was undeniable. The cost, however, was already being tallied. This was the bitter testament of a path chosen, a destiny embraced. The empire was rising, built on a foundation of public outrage and private pause defiant when dared thou unreign defiance. Private pause defiance. But any fortress sooner or later cracks. And so, when it seemed the empire was unbreakable, from the shadows emerged the first shadows. It was a quiet whisper, which quickly gained strength, turning into a chorus of accusations. Dozens of voices, female voices, spoke of manipulation, coercion, systematic psychological pressure. They painted a picture not of an artist, but of a predator, using his power as a weapon. His world, built on provocation, suddenly found itself under attack by its own rules. Accusations beginning around 2021 concerned a period that for many was simply a golden age. For others, the beginning of a personal pause, hell. The environment, accustomed to eccentricity, faced a reality where outrage was interpreted as a harbinger of violence. Contracts were torn. Friends turned away. Record labels, proud of his name only yesterday, today erased it from their catalogs. This was not just a career catastrophe. It was an anatomical theater, where under the scalpel of public opinion lay every facet of his personal life. The defense, as always, was aggressive. Denials, threats of countersuits. But the wave was too great. It swept away everything in its path, leaving behind only wreckage. A mutilated fate began its long, agonizing pause countdown. Но то, что было доступно публике, лишь вершина айсберга. Под толщей юридических формулировок и публичных заявлений скрывались иные течения. Показания, собранные годами, свидетельства, которые не имели шанса быть услышанными в суде. Не из-за их лживости, но из-за несовершенства. Pause системы. Истекшие сроки давности. Недостаточность улик для уголовного преследования, где планка доказательства непомерно высока. Это создавало парадокс. Общественность выносила свой приговор. Но юридический механизм буксовал, оставляя ощущение незавершенности. Или, что еще страшнее, безнаказанности. Некоторые детали, казалось бы, растворились в архивах, погребенные под бюрократической пылью. Другие были слишком личными, слишком интимными, чтобы стать частью публичного поз-досье. Они жили в памяти, в искалеченных судьбах, ожидая своего часа. Документы, которые никогда не доходили до зала суда. Записи, стертые, но не забытые. Шепот, который не мог стать голосом. Эта невидимая часть айсберга, нераскрытые главы, таились в ожидании. И лишь время или изменение правил игры могло вынести их на свет. Archival Document Number 7. Anatomy of Resurrection. The judicial mechanism, much like some ancient deity, is slow, inescapable. In January 2025, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office after 4 years of investigation, closed the criminal case against Brian Warner. The official phrasing, insufficiency of evidence. Statutes of limitations expired on certain episodes. This was not an acquittal, but a cessation of prosecution. The cold calculus of jurisprudence. The public, craving retribution, was left with a bitter aftertaste. It seemed the concrete sarcophagus of justice had reliably sealed this chapter. But the rules of the game, they change. California, the state of perpetual upheaval, enacted a new law, Assembly Bill 250, effective January 1st, 2026. It opened a narrow 2-year window for lawsuits previously deemed hopelessly time-barred. A loophole, a crack in the monolith. And it was into this crack that Ashley Walter's suit, that of a former assistant, once again pierced. Her case, repeatedly dismissed, was resuscitated. The judge gave the green light. The accusations, all the same: sexual exploitation, manipulation, psychological abuse, dating back to 2010 to 2011. This is not merely the revival of an old lawsuit. This is a systemic shift, a demonstration of how legislation, like a surgical scalpel, can incise old wounds, exposing what seemed long buried beneath the sands of time. A new chapter in the chronicle of a fall, written by the hand of law. Archive document number 8. The Bunker's Shadow. In the labyrinth of public consciousness, where facts blend with conjecture and reality with projection, shadows emerge, unmoored from any direct tie to the document. They exist in the collective subconscious, an inevitable backdrop for figures of this magnitude. The name Jeffrey Epstein, once spoken like invisible ink, bleeds onto many surfaces. It has become a symbol of hidden connections, of elite impunity, and most terrifyingly, of systemic evil. No direct evidence, no official mention linking Warner to this specific quote, _0 exists in the dossier. This is important. But in a world where reputation is fragile crystal and public opinion a hammer, even a hint, even a shadow of rumor can forge a new, suffocating reality. His name, already burdened by its own accusations, has become a magnet for these broader, more sinister associations. He finds himself in a mental maze where every corner casts a shadow and every whisper adds a brick to the wall of isolation. This is not a court's verdict. It is perception's judgment, and it is far more ruthless. It has no statute of limitations. Isolation becomes absolute. Thousands of invisible threads woven from fear and suspicion ensnare a figure already teetering on the edge. This is not mere solitude. This is exile. Exile. The calendar pages turned. A new album, a new tour, a fragile attempt at reclamation. But the concrete of public perception, once poured, hardens quickly. The acquittal on some charges, a momentary reprieve, offered no true absolution. It was merely a pause in the siege. The legal gears ground on, resurrecting old ghosts, reaffirming the narrative of a man perpetually entangled in his past. The new law, a bureaucratic lever, pulled him back into the grinder. Each victory, each release was shadowed by the weight of what remained. International stages closed. Audiences, once vast, fractured. Some clung to the art, others recoiled from the artist. His artistic testament, once a defiant roar, now echoed with the hollow ring of controversy. The very act of creation became an act of defiance against an invisible jury. The sobriety, a personal triumph, remained largely unseen, overshadowed by the relentless inventory of perceived sins. This was not a career resurgence. This was a desperate excavation, trying to unearth relevance from beneath layers of accusations and fear. The air around him grew thin. The walls, built not of brick but of rumor and revulsion, pressed ever closer. His legacy, once a monument to rebellion, began to crumble, each falling stone a testament to the inescapable power of Pa's collective memory. His name, once a lightning rod for counterculture, now functions as a Rorschach test for an era grappling with its moral compass. What remains? The music, stripped of its context, or the man, burdened by his alleged transgressions? The questions linger like stale smoke in an abandoned room. Can art truly be separated from its creator, especially when the creator's life becomes a public battlefield? The audit of his impact is complex. A generation found voice in his rebellion, a mirror in his provocation. Yet the echoes of his alleged abuses now redefine that legacy, casting a long, distorting shadow across his entire narrative. This is the bitter testament of an empire in decline. Not just his own, but perhaps a broader cultural shift, where the pedestal of celebrity has become a precarious gallows. Accountability, once a whispered hope, now wields the force of a digital mob. The court of public opinion, ruthless and relentless, issues its own verdicts, often without appeal. His story, this chilling anatomy of a fall, serves as a stark reminder. Even in the gilded cage of fame, even with the armor of millions, one cannot escape the unforgiving gaze of the collective conscience. The final act is not yet written, but the pen has already left an indelible stain.